Hey everyone, I am Rafi Salem back with the Manhattan Edit Workshop based in New York City, but all around the world. Today we have this incredible new guest, Cindy Mollo. Welcome to the show. And of course, Jason Banky and Josh Apter, Manhattan Edit Workshop. So Josh, why don't you start us off, and then Jason, and then please introduce Cindy.
Okay. I'm Josh, founder of Manhattan Edit Workshop. It's been 20 plus years that we've been, training people in the art and technique of film editing and graphic design. And as much as we love teaching people where all the keyboard buttons and controls are, we really love teaching people about the why of editing, not the how. And so we've been talking to editors about their process, about the art of editing for a long time. This is another way to do that, and so it's great. This is like my favorite part of the job is to talk more about the creative decision making process and story and things like that than anything else. So welcome, thank you very much. I'll throw it to Jason, who was a student at the school before essentially running the joint.
Right. So I was a student and Josh could not get enough of me. So he decided to hire me. And that's the end of the story. No, and so I've been with Josh now, I don't know how long, 15 years. I don't know, too long, right?
Too long, yeah.
So we've kind of helped foster a lot of things. We started an event series as well. That's how we got to know Cindy. She came to, I don't remember what year that was. You came out to our Sight Sound and Story.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think you were working on House of Cards, maybe?
Yes.
A while ago. And you've done some great things since, and we'll get to that. But yeah, we're still trying to get the why, because as much as they want to replace, everything with AI, that's still not going to happen. So that's where we're at. I don't know, Josh, did you want to introduce Cindy, or do you want to just?
I think we're halfway there now. Cindy, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I started my career in New York. I went to school in Boston, and I had an internship where I got to touch at the time, video editing system. And, I don't remember lightning striking, but it was certainly this moment where I was like, wow, I really like this. And very quickly, I was editing with like a producer from WGBH would come over to put together a clip reel for the next Masterpiece Theater show that was coming out in the fall or the spring or whatever. And I don't know that I necessarily knew exactly what I was doing technically, because my boss years later told me that my clip reels had to be reassembled because the levels were too high, or the video was too bright. And but people liked working with me, and I just was so jazzed to be doing what I was doing that it just took off. It snowballed, and I moved to New York and got an opportunity to learn the Avid. Some people I had known were among the first employees at Avid. Some people I had known in Boston. And it just took off. Like it's hard to say. It would never happen this way now because all these different editing systems are here. We all know them. Kids learn computers in college. But I was just at this perfect point where the Avid came along. I was doing jobs for ad clients, and then a show came to the company I was working for, and they wanted to use the Avid, and I trained their editors how to use the Avid. And when a spot came up on the show very early on, they asked me to fill in while they looked for someone. There weren't that many people who knew how to do episodic shows on nonlinear, as we called it, editing equipment. And I remember saying, I will do such a good job for you, you won't need anyone else. And they were so stressed out and busy, they're like, whatever, just go in there, read the script book, but keep the dailies moving along. And that show, coincidentally, I have the mug here, was Homicide, Life on the Street. And I worked on that show for 5.5 seasons. I mean, it gave me my career. I met so many wonderful people. My first feature was with Henry Bromell, who had been a writer producer on Homicide. He directed a feature years later, and Clark Johnson, an actor on the show, did a lot of directing, and I've worked with him on HBO films and TV pilots. It still has a very dear place in my heart, not just because it launched my career, but because I met so many wonderful people. And because, when people will say to me, how did you get your start? I'm like, I'll tell you the story because it's interesting. And because maybe it will help you see an opportunity somewhere along the way that you'll gravitate towards. But I don't know that it would ever happen this way again. I had not ever done episodic television, but I knew the tool. And at that point, not a lot of people did. And so that was how I say everything in my life came from Homicide.
Well, it's, we've talked a lot about, well, first of all, I got to go back because that you fell in love with editing because of video, like the worst possible iteration of editing of all of them, which was linear video editing.
Yes.
On like the UVW 1800s. I was an editor in college on that thing where you'd like preview your edit and it would roll it back and it would show it, and like then it was done. And if you screwed up 8 edits in, you had to lay the whole thing down and lose a generation and it was like, it's the work of the devil. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And yet you were like, I just can't get enough of this torture.
Well, I was so lucky because I was good with clients. I mean, I really do think it goes back to that. I used to joke that because I worked on the montage, if you remember that, 17 beta decks behind a glass wall. They were so loud, and they'd click, 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 go randomly access the material so you could play your edit. Well, you'd set up, we wanted to play a sequence of cuts, and you'd program an into and out, and you'd hit these 2 buttons to accept the edit. So I would always do it very big gestures. And then you'd get a little message like up to 180 seconds before play. So that's when I would turn to my ad agency clients and go, did I ever tell you about growing up in Rhode Island? And I would just have a bunch of stories to tell. I'm making it sound more rehearsed than it was. I'm just a gabby person, as you can tell. And I would just be like entertaining. And people loved it. And I had a big client base. And so then when the Avid came along, or before that, like CMX 6000, I mean, all these, I'm dating myself, obviously, but what the hell? All these different systems came along that I had to learn and to see what would be the next thing that we'd purchase to work with these clients. And when the Avid came along, I did like a day and a half of training, and I was editing with Young and Rubicam on a big pitch campaign for Coldwell Banker, I think it was. So like they're pitching to get this work. So you do like a mock commercial, you show them the look of the commercial, the sound of the commercial, what you're going to do for this client if you get the job. So they were big deal jobs, and I needed very little training to be able to do everything I needed to do on the Avid. And I'm not advertising for Avid, I don't work for them. But it was so intuitive. And I said to my boss, they're like, well, do you think we should buy this system as opposed to some? I said, this is going to be the Kleenex of editing systems. It's so easy and it's so intuitive. And now, of course, we take it for granted. But I think it's why people cling to the Avid so much, even when other systems come along that seem to be quite good. Avid just, I think it thinks like an editor thinks. And I didn't mean to go off on equipment.
No, it's okay. We understand you're getting a commission from direct from Tewksbury.
My
wired
other
to your
mug
account.
said Avid.
Well, no, I mean, like I remember the first time I saw one work, and the person, it was like a teacher teaching a class, and it was so overflow. There were people standing lined up in the door, like looking in from outside the door.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you know what? We'll just make a copy and we'll do another draft. And of course, the whole place, we're all like Steenbeck trained, being like, stop. What? Because that just one unimaginable fact was everything. It didn't matter if it was rigid or difficult, or they had to put your SCSI drives in the freezer sometimes to unstick them and put them in sequence, or they wouldn't fire up. Like there were so many problems, but none that even came close to undoing, hanging it up, hoping you could remember what you did, like that kind of, or like video where it's just like, oh my God, I have to relay this thing down for the 9th time. I can't see it anymore. It's, it really did. Why that one and not some other one? I don't quite understand, but like, and then Final Cut almost, I would say, got pretty close to
Yeah,
stealing its lunch, but then they turned in a whole other direction and
yeah.
decided I don't even know what they decided to do. It seems
I,
very crazy to
I,
me.
yeah, I don't know either, because when I had to do House of Cards on Final Cut Pro, and it was interesting in my meeting on the show, I said, I don't know Final Cut very well. And I joined House of Cards in the second season, so they were already well established on Final Cut. They're like, that's okay. We're just looking for good editors. Like, we know you can figure it out. And, I didn't enjoy working on Final Cut for most of there were times it was difficult because I had already been editing on Avid for so long and had my way of working. But I, it was fine. Like, it really did
Mhm.
show me, like, well, I can figure out whatever they put in front of me and get through it. It's really more about being a storyteller. And I know that word has been overused, but that's what we are. We are storytellers. And, you figure out how to use the tools to tell the story you want to tell.
I'm really curious. Actually, this is a question for Jason. In terms of our students today at the MEWShop, do they have a similar experience to what Cindy is talking about? Like, there's either Final Cut or there's like, do students gravitate towards one software or another?
Well, I think when they come in, they're either have a taste of Premiere Pro, or something less than that. But I think we're finding a lot of people are trying to learn Avid, just because it's different, and I think it's a more professional product. Even though you can get your work done on Premiere, there's high level things being done on Premiere all the time.
Mhm.
Avid is definitely the standard still. I mean, someone like Cindy, who's well established, you're not the only one by any means
Yeah.
that that are still making feature films and TV programs and everything in between. But definitely Premiere Pro is one that's, everybody complains about it, but they're using it.
Yeah.
Some
But it wasn't like that. It used to be Final Cut was gaining steam. 7.4 or whatever the last version before X came out was like, it was awesome. It was really, and
Yeah.
like, the thing is, I remember I learned on Avid. I had no problem learning Final Cut. But if I had started in Final Cut, I don't think I would have needed help learning Avid.
Yeah.
Like, the rules were much more strict. It was like, I told people, like, Avid's like driving stick.
Yeah.
Final Cut's like driving automatic. And, but they're both cars, right?
Yeah.
JKL, right? It's just like, it's not rocket science for 90% of what editors need to do.
Right.
But Jason, you learned your class was Final Cut and Avid, right? Before
I
we
learned
went to
on
Premiere.
Final Cut and then went to Avid, and I didn't like Avid at first, but what I started to recognize about Avid is it made you think differently. Like, it made you think probably more like I cut on a Steenbeck, which is dating me a little bit, when I was in film school, because the only Avid we had was like a waiting list of forever. And so I still did that, but that thought process of like being a little bit more articulate in how you were going to make a decision just seemed to be, not that it wasn't easy and that you couldn't make 50 versions and all that other things. It just felt like Final Cut more, it was just drag and drop kind of thing in a different way. So like slapping things together, as opposed to, I don't know what it was, but then so I ended up liking Avid more.
Well, I think in the beginning, sorry to interrupt. I think in the beginning, the Avid timeline was more rigid. You couldn't just drag something and drop it just anywhere
Totally.
in space. You did have to build up sequentially, and then you could move things around. And Avid certainly looked at what people were doing in Final Cut and copied that. I mean, when I was learning Final Cut, and someone said, "Oh, you can take all those keyframes. You just mix that sound. You can take all those keyframes and just copy them onto another piece of music that you're auditioning for that spot." And I was like, wow, that's brilliant. And now you can do that in Avid. It's not as easily as it was in Final Cut, but they've learned from each other.
Yeah.
No, I think that was great, is that it gave them some competition. They didn't own the market. Because people, like, I remember talking to an editor who like mortgaged his house to buy an Avid.
Yeah.
And it was like, you just couldn't, it was cost prohibitive.
Yep.
And you just couldn't, it was tough back then. And then Final Cut just brought the barrier of entry down. And, now Resolve is essentially giving it away.
Yeah.
And, they're amazing tools. Now, to go back to what you were saying after that, though, like, regardless of the the tools you're using, in terms of being an editor, you were talkative and friendly. You were eager to learn and curious, right?
Yeah.
These are things that like you can't put in a software package, right? Hit the C button for curiosity. And then, you were able to receive like this, you jumped at an opportunity and it was presented to you. It was like you were there for the luck that presented itself to you.
Right.
You took that chance with the confidence that you could handle it because you had this sort of client relations thing down while you were waiting for this render or whatever was happening. Just like you like people, which is I think part of an editor's toolbox, in addition to the understanding of character and story and these other sort of things that we take for granted. But that how you got started, I think and I guess there's a question: could you recreate something like that with someone who is, curious, a go-getter, knowledgeable, friendly? Like those traits, it seems like, of course, that could happen now. It just happens differently now. But like,
Right.
do you see how do you see people coming up today?
I do think it could happen now. I guess that just the only difference would be it probably wouldn't be because of equipment that you get your foot in the door initially. And actually, what I've started doing in recent years, I had this epiphany one day where I was like, for a long time I was chasing the next thing. Like, okay, I've done, Homicide was a network television show. Now I want to do something for HBO. Okay, I've did that. Now I want to do a feature film. I've done a couple of feature films. Now I want to do like, I've always tried to follow the best writing I can in whatever format. And one day I just said to myself, well, I don't know if I want to just keep chasing the next thing or thinking of it as climbing a ladder, because that seems sort of self-defeating. Like not everything falls on a ladder as being better, better, better. There's different ways to go laterally. And I thought one thing I want to do in this next phase of my career is I want to mentor. I want to give back. And that sounds like a platitude, but I really meant it, because I have learned so much in sort of non-traditional ways just by, learn while you earn, getting these opportunities that maybe you would think on paper I wasn't quite ready for, but I got the opportunity, I made the best of it, and then I got the next opportunity. So, what is that secret sauce? So the union has this women's steering committee, and we do a mentoring project once a year where you get a young mentee and you work with that person for the year, and it can take any shape you want. And this is my second time doing it, and I meet with the person I'm mentoring once a month, and we just talk about the business. And sometimes people will have really concrete questions like, how do you do dailies? Like, do you watch everything? Do you just go by the script notes? And I tell them how I do things. One of the things I always make a point to do, and this is a more direct answer to your question, is I have them do an interview with me over Zoom, because I think that I have gotten pretty good at it. Not just because I've gotten a lot of the jobs I've interviewed for, but because I know that I really trained for it. This background with the flowers, with the little depth behind me, is not an accident. Like, I've done rehearsals. I actually, at the end of a meeting with a director, he said, I got to tell you, you have the best background I've ever seen, because I had this
It has good lines, by the way. I was going to
lines,
say,
right?
yes, it's well, also though, with the split though, the
Yep.
light and the dark right
Yep.
above your head,
Yep.
I think that calls into question a little bit of what are your motives here? Are they
Drama and
flowers?
comedy.
Are they right? Like you're good at both things, but like, are you going up that dark staircase, or are you going to hang with in the garden?
And I didn't put my ring light up today because it's upstairs next to my Avid, because I have Zoom calls for work all day, but usually there's a ring light. And, I'm joking, but I want people to rehearse and really think about, like, yeah, you're doing your interview from your home and you may have your pajamas on from the waist down and your slippers, but this is serious. Like, you could get this job. It could be 6 months of your year. It could change your career, or it's a nice conversation where someone remembers you months later for a different job. Like, there's a lot on the line. So I've done this with friends and with people I'm mentoring to really rehearse, and I get them to prepare sometimes over prepare. And then you just have to say, you're not going to get to say all this, but you just want to have some of this information ready in case it comes up. If you're meeting with a director, what has that director done? Have you seen everything? Have you seen half of what they've done and you hope to see the rest? Like, just, be prepared. So that's the next thing that's like the part of my career where right now where I'm doing a show, I'm working on a show that I really love that does take up a lot of my time, but I'm doing this other stuff that does benefit me, quite frankly. I mean, it's not like, I'm only doing it for others. I really enjoy talking about editing, and I enjoy sharing what I know about, how to build a career and how to interview.
It's
So
amazing how few people think about that too. Like, do the research. Just go and find out what they've done. In some cases, many instances when I was doing that, I was like, oh, I know that person. They worked with people. Like, you find that you, like the 6 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you make that connection in an interview with someone. This was pre this, like you'd be sitting with a person.
Yep.
You hope that they liked the person that you knew. The worst thing that could happen is to be like, oh yeah, I know Jeff. And they're like, that guy's an asshole.
Or it's just crickets and you don't know what they think,
Right. And you're just like, oh, I don't like him either. Right.
So I have a very
Exactly.
directed question, Cindy, and it's related to my son that just graduated from film school because he's looking for a job right now. How does the other side work? You have this women in mentoring program. How do the mentees even find out that they can get a mentor?
It's advertised through the union. So like where your son has just graduated, he wouldn't be in a union yet, but what he could do, and I'm not being like this, I mean this, he could, with other friends from school, they could interview each other. They could, I'd be happy to tell him a couple of things. Sorry, alarm going off. That they should think about, and they could practice with each other. Because I do think that like interviewing, you're showing your personality, you're going to hope that people like what they see, pardon me, but it is also preparation. It's, think of, and this applies to any field. You're always going to be asked, what's your strength? What's your weakness? The question I hate is what's your favorite film? I don't know. I mean, I have so many that I like. My guilty pleasure is Galaxy Quest, but I'm not going to mention that in every
You got the
meeting.
job.
I'll
You
hit the
got
pause
the
button.
job.
I'll hit the pause button on the recording.
No, it's okay. The secret's out. But case in point, if I was taking a meeting on The Crown or a Masterpiece Theater show, I'm probably not going to mention Galaxy Quest. I'll mention, something with better. I don't want to say better writing. I don't mean it that way, but something a little more highbrow, something based on literature. So every interview is going to be different. I'm the same person. I always say to my agent when she asks how a meeting went, I said, well, I was the best Cindy Mollo that I could be. If they want Cindy Mollo, then I showed up and I did a good job. But if they want someone else, I can't be anyone else. I can only be the best me. And the second thing you can do to that is just to prepare to answer the right kind of questions for that director, writer, producer. You have to do some homework.
So moving into question number 2, what are you working on now, and where
Okay.
are you? Where are you located? Because a lot of times we are interviewing or having a recording with people on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and you said you started out in Boston and came down to New York. Are you New York through and through?
No, I've been in LA now since well, around 2001. I've been here full time. So I live here now. Ironically, when I first moved here, I got a feature back in New York, and so suddenly I was being put up in a furnished apartment in New York, and people talked to me like I was from LA, and I'm like, I literally just left New York. Like I still so I'm based here, and you go on location, maybe not as much as we used to, but I've been back to New York for some jobs, and but now I'm here. And the job I'm working on right now is so interesting to me. I'm really just in love with it. It's the working title is The Core, CORPS. And we will probably changing that because you always have to spell it so people know that you're not saying C-O-R-E. And it's based on a book called The Pink Marine, which is about a young kid in 1990. He's gay. His best friend is straight, and his friend is going into Marine boot camp. And there's this program called the Buddy System where you can join with a friend and they'll keep you together in boot camp and you can go through camp together. So our protagonist decides he's being bullied in school. He's always been bullied because he's different. And he thinks, I'm going to go into boot camp with my buddy because A, we'll be together, and B, maybe I'll toughen up and I'll be able to handle the bullies. It'll make me stronger, make me a man. And of course, it's the ultimate bullying because they want to toughen you up, break you down and build you up again. And it was one of those situations where I was hoping to get a different job. My agent said, well, there's this other project that's interested in you. It's about, I think it's about the military. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do a show about the military. I assumed it was like a SEAL Team 6 or something and action and guns. And I just...
It's no Galaxy Quest.
It's no Galaxy Quest. And I'm still waiting for Galaxy Quest 2 to land on my email. But I read the script and it was really heartwarming. I mean, the young kid at the center of the story is just lovely, and it has a lot of humor. And not unimportantly, it was executive produced by Norman Lear, and that really appealed to me. So it had a lot of humor. I don't get to do a lot of humor. I'm the dead body in a trunk, guns.
You gotta hold up the Homicide mug anytime you say, I'm the Homicide.
What's not funny about that? That's hysterical.
So I took the meeting, and one of the producers was someone I knew from Mad Men. I had worked with him for a season, and the showrunner was just lovely. I mean, we just had a great conversation about the things that I care most about character, about like good storytelling. The script was well written. It had humor. It had, you were scared for this kid. The Marines is no joke, from being woken up at 4 a.m. by smashing garbage can lids to physical endurance on an obstacle course. But then there were just funny moments as the kids are getting to know each other. And so I loved the script. I loved everyone I was meeting associated with the show. And so I started that last May. We got to shoot 3 episodes before the actors' strike shut us down. And then we were down for a couple of months. And then as soon as the writers settled, we came back and we were doing notes on those 3 episodes. Then we shut down in January because they wanted to work on the remaining scripts. And we just started up in March, taking those first 3 episodes. And I've taken responsibility for them. And we're just, I would get a call. I kept joking that I was like the editor in the boiler room. They'd call down and go, can you take episode 2? And can you move the flashbacks into episode 1? And I'm like, Roger, I'll get right back to you. And I go make the changes, send it out. And, I was helping as the writers were trying to retool, what we would do to finish the 8 episodes. So it's been great. We just started shooting on Friday. So by the time I go upstairs, I'll have dailies. And it's got, I look for 5 things in any job. Like when I take a meeting, you're getting all my corny lessons today.
No, they're not corny. We're gonna take this and bottle it up and sell it.
Just put a little asterisk and credit me for it. But no, when I'm like Rafi, is it Rafi or Rafi?
Rafi, but my family calls me Rafi, so we're like family now.
Okay, there you go. So for your son, when you're thinking about a project and you get a script, you really want to first look at the material. Like, is this a good script? Is this a good story I want to be a part of? And then you look at the people who are making it, particularly the director, because it's going to be his or her vision if it's a feature. And then maybe the writer producers if it's television, because that's their world. And, you want to think about the other people you'd be on a crew with, am I the last editor being hired? Then I want to think about who's already been hired. Is that a team I want to be a part of? You think about your assistant. Because it's LA, you have to think about the drive, like the commute. Will I be working from home or will I be going from Santa Monica to Burbank, which I won't do anymore? It's too much of your day spent in a car. And you think about the salary, and the only part of that I think is not negotiable is you have to think about the script first. You can put everything else in a different order depending on, if it's work from home, then obviously the commute doesn't matter. If you're independently wealthy, the salary doesn't matter, but that doesn't apply to many people. So I look at all those things, and this job that I'm on currently has it all. I mean, I just love the people I work with. I love the stories. Yes, it is about the military, but I have to say the side of the military that I'm seeing, which is the training, not the war, it's amazing to see how they break people down. Some people don't make it, but the people who start to thrive, you see a real difference in them. And so, sadly, Norman Lear passed away. I won't get to meet him, but everything else about the show that I'm working on has turned out to be, well, except if I guess the audience doesn't like it, that would be a bummer, but everything else along the way has been great so far.
We touched upon the AI. I don't remember if it was pre starting to record or not. So we were talking about trends in the industry. Are you, in your current status and work and working, experiencing any AI or anything upcoming futuristic that you want to let everyone know about?
The one thing that I have heard about, and the union showed us a really interesting presentation about how AI could be used to like do temp ADR lines and uh, how securities, what's the word I want? Permissions were going to be built in, so that, let's say you created a line of dialogue from from all the material you had in the show. You wrote a line, you had AI create this line in the actor's voice. You couldn't do an output of the show or like a turnover somehow built into the software until you got permission from the actor, and maybe the actor re-recorded it or something. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They are trying to prevent, in that case, the AI from taking work from the actor, because the actor would get called back to record the line. I thought that was interesting. I know I did some voiceover for a friend on their film. It was kind of a her type computer voice. He's French and he needed an American voice. So I did all this voiceover. And one morning, because he's ahead of me, I wake up to this message. He's like, we need, one or two more lines. And I made a joke like, well, I'll have to call my agent. I'm not sure I can do it. And he said, I'll just have AI do it. And I was like, oh, right. That's what it's come down to. Like, it's that easy. So that's as close as I've come to it. I've been thinking about writing a book, and I've been doing some conversations with friends about editing. And I was going to have AI transcribe the conversations. And then I realized, oh no, all these free transcription services have access to your material. I mean, it's written right there in the agreement. So if I'm talking to people about editing and AI gets my content, they can go write the book on edit. Like I'm not going to train AI. I know that it's coming. I know there are ways it will be great, but I'm not going to train it in how to edit. Like I'm not going to contribute to that. That seems crazy. So I have a friend who's going to transcribe for me, and I'm going to pay her. Like it seems like a small.
Is that true? But let me just, when I go into my phone and I go to notes, sometimes I'll just want to get something down and I'll just go into notes and just start writing. And I'll hit the microphone and go. It's a closed loop. Are you saying that now when I do that, like
no, I don't know about that feature. I'm talking about like this was Otter AI. It's a specific.
They're made for that. Yeah. So there's workarounds.
Yeah, and if you want like the free version, well, I think it would even apply if I pay, because when you pay, you get more minutes per month. And but I still think they can sample your content. It's just part of the bargain. And then there are other services that cost a little bit where they don't don't own your content. They don't have access to it. So it's just something to be, and it was particularly the nature of what I was doing, which is talking to people about how they edit. And I just thought, nah, I don't know that I want to contribute to that. It's coming, it's going, they're saying that the first thing it might affect editing will be for assistant editors, like AI will do the turnover, which is, it's all numbers and files, and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But then suddenly you won't have as many assistant editors, and how do assistant editors become editors if they're not already there's a big distance between us compared to the film days. So I don't know. I'm very wary of it, but I know that some of it is inevitable. So I'm trying not to get too paranoid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
too paranoid. But you're wanting to mentor people, I think, also that that willingness to do that and sort of step into a situation that was really the way people came up and an assistant editor's experience when they were in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all that counterbalances that. You can't generate that relationship or that perspective, or hey, come take a look at this. What are your thoughts? Or take a scene, go cut it, and let me see what you do. Right,
And
like that interactivity.
it's hard, like on this current show, because we were getting started, and I wasn't sure like exactly what the tone would be, like how funny or how dramatic. I did say to my assistant when I hired her, I said, I'm not sure how much I'll be able to give you to cut until I know that I understand the tone of the show. And we've still been kind of fine tuning it. So probably now as we go forward, I'll be able to give her some things to cut, and I'll be able to give her some notes. But prior to this, it's been really busy, a lot of changes. And so I haven't been able to do that, but I usually try to do that.
So one of the things you touched upon was that, you belong to the union. And
Yep.
Interestingly, Josh and Jason, this has never come up before in our previous thousands and thousands of conversations. It seems like the unions are protecting the industry from the oncoming futuristic, I am legend, robot. Like, to me, I'm a little scared right now that, that AI is taking all of our jobs. But I think we just touched upon something with the unions protecting the people in the industry.
I think they're trying to, and the first way they're doing that is to educate us. As I said, there was a town hall meeting a couple of months ago over Zoom where they showed this really interesting presentation, and I don't remember the company name, but it was they were trying to add protections to our editing system that would protect actors specifically. And I think what the union is telling us is quite realistic. They're like, look, we're always going to try to protect you, but there is some element of this that is just technology and the future, and people wanting to A, use the newest technology, but B, also wanting to save money. And so some of it is just, it's coming, and prepare yourself.
Speaking of what's coming, what do
Yeah.
you have? What do you have coming up? You told us what you're working on right now. Anything exciting that we should look out for as we
I'm
wrap up?
on No, I haven't had anything on the air since I did an episode of The Last of Us, so that came out last year. Then I've been on this show since last May, and that won't come out until 2025 sometime. And I'm currently, because this is how the business works now, if this is May of 2024, and I'm going to be on this show till October or November, I am looking for what I will do after this. I might take a vacation, and you do have to plan those carefully. But if a job comes up, the vacation gets pushed. And so I don't have anything on the horizon. But this is the time when I look for it and I start to get calls, and you have to weigh. Like I said at some point earlier, I always try to follow the best writing possible. So, I try to keep my finances such that I'm not like, I have to have a job the day this ends, I have to start something the next day, because that's how you put yourself in a position where you have to take a job that maybe you wouldn't be as proud of, as if you could, relax a little bit and say, I'm going to wait until that HBO well-written miniseries comes along, or that Netflix show. So that's kind of how I try to.
So you've given us a lot of nuggets through this conversation. Cindy, and then Jason, and then Josh, can you give us, for this week's recording, one takeaway, either advice to anyone watching, or your colleagues, or people coming up in the industry? One takeaway.
I think at any point in your career, beginning, middle, towards the end, you have to stay game. You have to be open to, like in the case of the story I told, a show about the military. Sure. Like I see the other aspects to it that could be really interesting. I'm game. I'm in. Oh, you want to re-edit, or you want me to re-edit your movie on Premiere? I've never worked on Premiere, but I'm game. I'll try it. If you are patient with me, I'll be patient with myself, and we'll get to a good place. Like, just be game and be open to opportunities.
Thank you. Jason.
I think something that Cindy said was interesting, is this practicing even the interview process, just over preparing with what you're going to say, and favorite movies, to just being super prepared for everything you're going into, even if it's a job interview or anything, that talking with people in the edit room or the facility, anything like that, just to be over prepared. I think that's a takeaway I would get from this.
All right, Josh.
Well, you guys said the smart stuff, so I'm going to say something kind of silly. But when I was in graduate school, I went to a second-run theater on 40th, or the Worldwide Plaza in Manhattan, and you could go down to the downstairs and just walk from theater to theater all day for like $2. And I walked into a showing of a movie that I was forever changed by, called Galaxy Quest. So you bring it up, but I know Jason's like, oh my God. But you know what? Don't forget the wonder that you feel, because that movie was like, and I've been talking to people, it's like, when's the last time I felt like that? Or I was just like completely just taken on a ride that was like, and it's like, I'd like to say Dune 2, but no, I was just like seeing the director. We were talking about that Poor Things, and it was just like, it was just like watching a guy who's really proud of like this world that he created, that half people, I don't know, it's very subjective, but I remember seeing that movie, and I remember feeling like, being taken. I don't think, as we talk about as artists or storytellers, like allowing yourself to have contact with the part of you that is an audience to this and taken on a place by these things. And I'm glad you said it, because that's one of my all-time favorites. And it's not for any reason I can explain. It's like, it works.
It entertains on every level. Like, if you are the Star Trek kind of fan, it's solid there. It's funny, it's well written, it's smart, and it's great acting. I mean, think of that cast. It's really great acting.
Absolutely amazing. And it has a little bit of that Larry Sanders type of like the show, and then the reality of like, so it's like, it has a cynicism that's completely overtaken by its optimism in the fans and the little kids who are like running around taking out the garbage before they can help save the universe.
Oh,
like,
I love that. You've made me so happy, Josh.
Right back at you. I'm gonna watch it again. I love it. There's something weird. Like, honestly, I'll just say this out loud. Galaxy Quest and Yesterday. I could watch them every year at least once. Like, it's just like, it's something about, it's like when you plug something in and you recharge a battery on a phone, like those movies recharge my battery for storytelling, humanity, whatever you want to say. And it says a little window into what sort of a kook I am.
Amazing. Jason, what's going on at the Manhattan Edit Workshop?
Well, first thing is I'm going to go rewatch Galaxy Quest. That's the first thing I'm doing. Well, we have some media composer classes coming up in the middle of June that are open, and we have an event debuting on the 26th about the editing of The Bear, which should be awesome. Yeah, because that's coming out right around then as well.
Right,
that's a great show.
When's our next 6-week course? Is it happening now, or
June 24th, something like that? Yeah.
When we have,
And I think we have a mobile media and Final Cut Pro classes on the horizon too.
Wow.
Final
Yeah,
Cut
we also-
hanging in there.
we also have an artist in residence for that class. Her name's Colleen Sharp. So check
Oh,
out.
I remember Carlene. I think I met her when I still lived in New York.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Nice woman.
Cindy Mollo, thank you so much for being on the Manhattan Edit Workshop recording of the week, talking with me. I didn't even say that. We're talking with MEWShop. And as always, Josh Apter, Jason Banky, thank you very much. And have a great week.
Thank you,
All right.
guys. It's really
Thanks
fun.
so much. All right, you
Thanks.
take care.
Bye.